The circus is in town. Hey guys, Steve here with the Scroll Saw Workshop. Over the holiday break, I designed this little circus train that you just saw, and rather than try to document the assembly instructions in the pattern book itself, which would take probably as long as it took to build the project, I thought I'd do a little tutorial video on the assembly and a couple of different issues that you might want to know before you start to try to build this project. My Christmas wagon train here is about 45 inches long, including the two elephants down there on the end. It's cut completely from 1/8 inch Baltic birch plywood, and I chose that for a reason, and I'll show you that here in a few minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a couple of supply items you may need. We're going to talk about the pattern book. I'm going to bring it up here and show you each page of that, and then we'll go to each individual car and talk about the assembly of it. Like I just said, we're going to build this whole project out of this 1/8 inch thick Baltic birch plywood. A couple of reasons for that. One is it's very inexpensive, so a large project like this can be built cheaply. The other is, to make this project not take so long to cut, we're going to take advantage of stack cutting. Now, stack cutting, if you're not familiar, is a technique where we put two or more sheets of this Baltic birch plywood together and cut multiple pieces all at the same time. And I've intentionally designed this pattern where many of the pieces are used several times throughout the project. So for instance, the front and back of each wagon are all exactly the same. You just flip the one for the back over so the letters read the same and you're good to go. So in a lot of cases we're going to be cutting two at a time. In this case, the horses are cut out of two sheets, and so we get two horses cut at the same speed we would cut one, and we're going to use that technique throughout the whole project. Next thing you want to have on hand, and I highly recommend this because this Baltic birch plywood is so thin that trying to clamp it up can be a real challenge. So rather than worry about clamping, I use cyanoacrylate glue and the activator that comes with it. So when you put these two pieces together with this stuff, they bond instantly and you don't have to worry about clamping anything up. Now maybe the downside of that is you have to get the pieces assembled accurately the first time, but the way I designed this, it makes it actually pretty easy. It's all slot and tab or directly glued right to another surface. So you want to have some of this super glue on hand. Wood glue is going to make it a real challenge to glue up. Of course, you're going to use your blue painter's tape to sandwich the boards together to build your stack that you're going to stack cut from. And then you need a scroll saw blade. For this whole pattern, I actually cut the whole thing out with a number 3 modified geometry Pegasus blade. Pegasus blade. But you could probably use a number 5. Some of the pieces are going to get a little fragile with a number 5. I would probably stick to a 3 if you had some. Let's see. Other than that, a little spray adhesive to put the pattern on the board, and you're good to go. Because this pattern is fairly extensive, it's over 12. It is 12 pages long. I want to go through each page of the pattern and just point out some things you might want to keep in mind. Page number 1 here is the two horses that we're going to cut out. And see these numbers right here? These indicate how many of each of these pieces you need. So in this case we need 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, and we need 4 of the mains for the horse. Down here in the lower right hand corner we have an assembly guide for how to put this together. It's actually pretty obvious, and when we actually look at the first car, I'll show you a little tip to make assembling this horse easy to make sure the feet get on the ground, or at least as close to it as you can get. I am going to modify this pattern to put another one of these over here, so you can just use 2 sheets and you'll cut this out twice, but you'll end up with 4 of them. So rather than setting a separate stack of 4 to cut this out, we'll have everything on just 2 sheets of plywood. That's page 1. Page 2, we've got the ringmaster, the driver of the first wagon, and we've got his faithful dog. Everything's pretty obvious here. This piece right here is the center piece, so you'll have 2 of these. They'll be sandwiched with this in the middle to make a little 3-dimensional driver. These are his arms, obviously. This is the seat that he'll sit on the front of the wagon, and you want to pay close attention to the assembly, because the seat back actually goes against the edge of the seat bottom. So pay attention to this assembly guide when you get ready to put it together. Everything there is pretty obvious other than that. Page 3, this is when we get into the front and back of each of the wagons, the axles, and the hitches. This little hole right here is for the hitch pegs, and they are what go through the hitch right here to hold the cars together. 1 inch, 1/4 inch by 1 inch long dowel rod, and this piece right here to make the hitch pin. Let's see, when you cut this out, you need 6 of them in total. 6 might be a little bit too many to stack cut. If you're comfortable with stack cutting, fine, go ahead and do it. I actually broke this up into 2 sessions. I did 3 and then did 3 more. It just made it a little easier to cut out these letters than to try to cut 6. When you drill the holes for the axles to go through the wagon, the hole in the wheel itself is 1/4 inch, but the hole here is 17/64. That's because we want the axle to spin free in this hole, and I've got it labeled wrong right here, but I'll fix it before we get to it. So you can see where the axle pin goes down through here, or I mean the connector pin goes down through here. It's a 17/64 inch hole that you want to drill there. That's just to make that pin, that 1/4 inch pin, this piece right here, you want that to be a loose fit through there and not too tight. Same here, you want the axles, and the axles again will be 1/4 inch dowel rod cut to 5 inches in length. This piece right here is very important. It's a spacer that mounts onto this piece, but only on the middle car, and when we get to the cars I'll show you that. You're going to need a few dowel rods, 1/4 inch. Each of the dowels for the axles again will be cut to 5 inches in length. The 2 dowels that you'll cut for the connector pins will be 1 inch in length. That's page 4. Page 5. This is the top and bottom of each wagon. This is the front of the wagon, and this is the back with the big top Circus logo on it. You're going to want 6 of these because it's a fairly easy cut. I did stack cut all 6 of these at once, and that was fine. One of these, and when you stack cut 6 of these, 3 of them will be bottoms and 3 of them will be top. One of the tops has to have an additional hole cut in it, and that's for the draft's head to stick through. So leave the pattern on the top, and when you disassemble the stack, then go ahead and cut this hole out right here. 3 of these, 3 of these. That's page 5. Page 6 are the wheels. You need 12 of these total. I did this in separate stacks. I think I stacked 3 pieces of plywood together and just cut it out until I got to 12 wheels. It was easier because there's some fairly small cuts in there, but cut as many as you're comfortable with. You end up needing 12 wheels total. This sheet, page 7, has mostly just the accessories for the top of the wagons. There'll be 3 of these ladders that go on the actual wagons themselves, and one of the ladders is actually for the monkey bars for the monkey to hang on. These 2 pieces right here are the assembly for the monkey bars. This piece goes on top of these 2 risers, and this is the base of the monkey bars. There's the monkey that hangs. Here's the extra monkey. You need 2 of each of these, 1 for the monkey bars, and we got 1 on the last car, and same with this right here. couple of accessories, just a shovel and an axe. I ended up cutting 2 of each of these. One I put on car 2 on the front, and the other set I put on car 1 on top. Again, we'll look at that when we get there. This is the little locked chest that goes on the top of Wagon 1. There'd be 2 of these. This is the top and the bottom, the front and the back, and the 2 ends. These are the strapping that go across the top of the chest, and this is the latch. And I'll show you that when we look at the cars. Page 8, we get into the animals. These are obvious. You cut out each animal. In this case, we have 2 lions, 1 bear, so we need 2 bases, just 1 base for the bear. The bear goes in Wagon 1, 2 lions go in Wagon 2, and the giraffe goes in Wagon 3, and that's the one that'll have the top with the hole cut in it, and his head sticks up through the top. These are, again, are all just 1/8 inch. Another situation where it's hard to try to clamp this together while the glue dries. So if you put a little of the cyanoacrylate glue on the bottom of the bear, spray the fixative to the base, and when you put him on there, he's dry in 2 seconds, ready to go. Same with the lions and the giraffe. Page 10 is where we begin the elephants. We're going to do 2 elephants. You can make as many as you want, but 2 was all I wanted to do. The only thing to watch out for here is the blanket that has the big top logo on it and the stars. They're not mirror images like the front and back of the wagons are, so you have to cut 2 of each, 2 for the front and 2 for the back, and they are mirrored, so when you put the blanket on the back it still reads correctly. I'll show you that when we get the elephants. Legs for the elephant, obvious, need 2 of each of those, and an assembly guide for the elephant just to make it a little easier to put together, and this is the base for the elephant. You'll need 2 of those. Those are the paper instructions. Now let's take a look at each of the individual wagons and talk about the assembly and the techniques for some of them. Let's start out with the 2 horses. The horses are built in 3 layers. You'll see that in the pattern. You're going to cut 2 of them at a time. Each layer of the horse has this small cutout in it right here. That cutout goes on the front of this, whatever you call it, that attaches the horses to the wagon. So when you get ready to assemble this, you want the horses to glue together with the sides lined up with this hole right here. Sometimes it's easier if you take the first piece before you glue it and you slide it on, so you'll have this piece built first already. You build the wagon before you build the horses, so you have this piece up underneath the wagon. Slide the first piece on, apply your glue, put the next piece on, apply your fixative, on and on until you get the horses assembled. Now, I did not glue the horses to this hitching post, whatever it is. They stay on there pretty well as long as you cut that hole well, and I wanted to be able to take it apart in case I wanted to move it, take it to a show or something. So mine are just sitting on there. If you want to glue them onto this hitching post, make them permanent, that's fine. Looking up here at the seat that the ringmaster sits on with his dog, make sure you pay attention to the assembly guide for how this goes together, or the dog and the ringmaster won't fit back into the seat right. So pay close attention to that. The front and the back are identical, but you'll notice when you read Circus it reads correct this way, and when you read Circus it reads correct this way. So when you go to assemble this box, which is basically all it is, a little box, make sure you flip this one before you put it onto the back. The way I did the assembly, I had all the pieces cut out, I laid this down flat, then I put the top in, glued it together, put the sides in, glued it in, put the bottom in, glued that in, and then I took the back, glued that onto here, and then I had a box. At that point, I cut the axles to 5 inch in length, put the wheels on the axles, and this is another situation where the hole that goes through this piece right here is 17/64. That's so the axle will spin. It's a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch. The hole in the wheel that the axle goes through is 1/4 inch, and that makes sure that the wheel is a nice tight fit under there. I haven't even glued them on yet. They're so tight I didn't even worry about gluing them on. I probably will when I get back to working on it. The axles are free floating in here, so they do move. If you wanted to put a spacer back here to keep them in the correct orientation, you could, but it was just something I didn't think was necessary. This piece is not designed to be used as a toy. It's designed to sit on the shelf, so it's not like it's going to be rolled around on the floor. To connect, well, let me finish up here. You see the accessories on the top. We've got the trunk, and there's the axe and the shovel and a little ladder sitting there. The connect, oh, and on the back, make sure when you put the back on that the logo for the Big Top Circus reads correct and you don't put it in backwards. I did that a couple times too and had to turn around and do it again. This piece right here is what the connector pin goes through that connects this wagon to the one behind it. And if you look on the bottom, you'll see it's just simply glued to the bottom, just the same as the piece that holds the horses on there. They're just glued to the bottom, and you can see the orientation there of about where they go. Pretty simple. That is wagon number one. Wagon number one, wagon number two has the lions in it. I want you to pay attention to the connector assembly that we use. If you can see this connector is lower than this one. And that's done by that spacer I showed you in the pattern. So on wagon number two, you got to make sure there's a spacer above this piece right here that's glued to the bottom. And that's so when you get ready to put the pin in, it sits above this one. Otherwise they'll bump into each other. So they connect together just that simple, just with that little pin. But this has to be lower than this, and that's done with that spacer. Let me set wagon number one aside here. Wagon number two, the construction is identical to wagon number one, with the exception, instead of having the hitch for the horses, we have the connectors on each end. And looking at the bottom, you'll probably have a hard time seeing this, but there's the connector here, and then there's a spacer that lifts it or lowers it down a little lower so it doesn't interfere with the connector on the wagon in front of it or the wagon behind it. Other than that, 5-inch axles, same holes cut, front and back are the same. Again, make sure you get the wording straight, and I'll show you on the last wagon. I've got to redo it because I actually got it backwards. Here's the monkey bars. You can see the two end pieces to the base, all just slot and tab, ladder on the top, and of course the two monkeys. Very simple. Wagon number three and the last wagon. Again, this hitch connector to the wagon in front of it does not have a spacer. It has to be higher than the one in front of it. So the pin goes down through this one, and the other connector will be a little lower. Other than that, assembly is identical, front and back. The only thing you'll notice here is what I've been telling you through these whole instructions I did not follow. If you look, you'll see that I've got this back piece on backwards because the Circus isn't correct. This is the piece that has the top with the hole cut in it for the giraffe's head to stick through. I hung one of the monkeys here on the end of the trailer and put one on the top. If you want to change the location of any of these accessories, that's fine. I'm just showing you how I did it. Everything else is identical on this. Moving on to our two circus elephants, you can see they are a layer of 3 sections. Kind of a skinny elephant, but that's fine. The instructions have an assembly guide to show you where to put everything. Everything pretty well fits into place just by how it's cut, so you'll see that pretty easily. You can see that the 2 leg sections are glued to the base. So you want to assemble this elephant, and as you're doing it, make sure these 2 bases are even at the bottom. Whatever you have to do to make sure these are even, get these pieces glued on there to where the base that's cut out will fit onto the bottom base. So you have to be careful of that. And again, when you turn the elephant around, the Big Top logo needs to read with the correct orientation. So when you cut out your pieces, make sure you get them set aside to where you've got a front and a back. Okay, that's the assembly instructions for my big top Circus wagon train. I think you can see it's not going to be too challenging to put together. I built the base train in about 6.5 hours using stack cutting as a technique to speed everything up. So that went pretty good. I then went back and made a few changes and had to make some corrections to the pattern to make things fit. Then I also added the accessories, and that probably took me another hour or two to do that. So you're talking somewhere, depending on your cutting speed and skill, you're talking somewhere between 6 and 10 hours to put this together. So you could pretty easily do one car per session and build it over 3 days or however you wanted to do it. I did it all in one setting, which was a little bit too long, but I was just trying to get it finished as soon as I could to have it ready to post. This pattern will be available on my blog. Again, it's one of my free patterns, so you're welcome to come get it and build it. You can sell the projects made from my pattern, you just can't sell the patterns. This project lends itself to a lot of the readers of mine that do their cutting with a laser. Because everything is 1/8 inch thick, cutting it with a laser is no problem. As a matter of fact, the original prototype, when I was prototyping wagon number 1, I cut it with the laser just to make sure everything was fitting together the way I wanted it to, and it worked out fine. So I always keep the patterns as PDFs, but inside the PDF, the individual pattern pages remain as vectors. So you can import them into your vector graphics program that you create your laser files with and convert them over to your red line, whatever you need to do for your laser cutters. I'm not going to post the link to this specific pattern. If you're watching this on video, in the description below, I'm going to post a link to my free online catalog, and this pattern will be available in the online catalog. There are categories plus a search box. When you go to my catalog, if this isn't still on the front page, just type in Circus in the search box and hit return, and you'll find this pattern plus several hundred other free patterns on there if you've not been there before. This pattern probably lends itself pretty well to being modified. So if you want to add accessories or move accessories or take accessories away, one simple modification would be to have a 4 team of horses drawing the wagons. Just extend the piece, the little hitching post, extend it out with another crossbar, extend it out far enough and cut 2 more horses, and you've added more to it. Obviously you could leave off the monkeys or add more monkeys, or having 4 elephants down there on the end of the train would be easy. Just cut some more, however you want to do it. The animals inside the wagons could obviously be swapped around. You'll have to keep the giraffe in the car that has the hole cut in the top of it, but other than that, you could put the lions in the front, or even come up with your own animals if you want and put them in the cages. I think that pretty well sums it up. I appreciate you being here with me at the Scroll Saw Workshop, and we'll catch you next time.